as it is an interview, the quality is going to be slightly below par anyways, so I don't care anymore. Because the focus is on actually being able to talk to you guys, not the quality of the recording. So, for those in the audience who have listened to me halfway through a sentence, today is Sunday, March 25th, 2012, and this is the interview with Penstroke and Batty Gloom that I have been promising for a long time. Because of scheduling. So, we have both of you here, if you'd like to introduce yourselves so they know your voices.
This is Penstroke.
And I'm Batty Gloom.
Welcome after that harrowing adventure in making Skype do what we ask it to.
14 minutes of frustration.
Yeah.
That you never get to hear.
That's true, they don't. But they get to hear me yell angrily a lot in the outtakes. And that's enough for me.
What are these outtakes? I haven't seen them.
I've listened to some of your outtakes. You are very interesting sometimes. Though not quite as interesting as your drunken antics when you were doing Drop of Moonshine with your friends.
Yes, interesting. So, a couple of things. I'm going to mention this more in the podcast this week, so I won't go over it much, but they haven't heard yet that I was at the Brony meetup in Cleveland a little bit ago. I met several interesting people. First off was Present Perfect, who was the other half of that night. He's actually an Ohio Brony, lives in the same city as me. And then, and more importantly, I met Argambarger, who wrote Spiders'.
Oh, lovely.
He is also a real person fairly close by. And I have sort of hopefully convinced him to maybe come on the podcast at some point and talk about Trollfix and such. But the random thing that I just sent you guys is that horrible picture that I was telling you about, that I don't know whether or not it will go through, but...
It didn't. Sending failed.
Ah, curse you.
Well, I think that's because you don't have Batty on your contacts. So.
That might well be why.
No, that is why. I'm sure of it. I've dealt with that issue before.
Fair enough.
I am downloading it right. I'm downloading the crayon drawing right now, though.
This hilarious crayon drawing that will be the... I'm just looking at it. It's terrible. Your music is bad and you should feel bad. So, now that... Wow, I was in some kind of mood when I started writing these questions. Twilight organizing winter wrap-up kind of mood. Because I've got, it's got the header, and then it's got little check marks down the thing. The first thing is intros, but the second one is friendly banter, and then clever retort.
That is very thorough.
I don't know why, and then it just sort of, it goes off the rails, and I'm like, whatever, it's gonna be like a gaming session. Eventually we'll just completely miss the mark, and it'll be fun. Whatever. So, first things first, I'm curious what got both of you into Friendship is Magic, and right about when you got in. Obviously fairly early on.
Well, not that early on. It was last spring, it was late last spring, so the thing had been going on for half a year, I think. Is that right, Batty?
Yeah, by the time that I first watched the episodes, I watched 1 through 20, which was all available. And then I told you I was working on fanfic. You asked me for what show, and I said, My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. And then you mentioned that your buddy's into it, and you're like, well, if you're into it, maybe I'll give it a shot. And here we are.
Nice. That was one question that I was going to save for later on, but I was interested in this and have been for a while because I write a very terrible fanfiction that I completely say don't even touch it, but I write My Little Enterprise, and I've also used Assisted By in a way that most other fic authors don't even recognize their pre-reader editors. So I wondered just how much influence both of you had on the story. What it sounds like is that it's a lot like Good Omens with Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, which is a very even sort of thing.
Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, you go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, well, it started like Pinstroke just did its own thing, and he allowed me the privilege of watching him write it. And then basically I just threw suggestions here and there, and basically Pinstroke just gradually gave me a little more influence. But he's still the head writer, you know. If he wants to do something and he's dead set on it, you know, I'll let him. Mm-hmm. But he's gracious enough to listen to me when I say suggestions or have ideas, and we work out from there.
Awesome. I'm also curious, what got you guys into writing and editing stuff? Like, how did you guys meet in the first place?
Well, first place writing, my writing started back early high school, actually early middle school, with fan fictions and fandoms I'm not going to disclose at this moment. Mm-hmm. And then in high school I tried my hand at some original writing that's now buried somewhere on my computer. I finished several very long, horrible stories, but all practice, I guess. And then I stumbled across a website called writing.com, and that's where me and Batty met.
Yeah, what happened was that they had this thing where you can make collaborative stories. You write a chapter, and then you can write another chapter, or someone else can write a chapter instead. And basically, after responding to each other just by writing alone, one of us decided, you know, let's talk to the other guy, and so we can talk about ideas and stuff. And then we started collaborating by email on the website. The website has its own email service, and then we collaborated by regular email. And then eventually started writing about ponies.
So, if you guys knew each other before that, then what was this random writing prior to?
It was an interactive fiction thing. So it was like a pick your own adventure story, but the way their system is built is that a person can write a chapter, leave the options, and then other writers are left to fill in those given options.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
So it's a very interesting system, though. It's a lot of hit or miss because you literally can get good, decent authors mixed with people writing a single paragraph or doing a single line and then re-splitting the options. So it turns into a horrible branching tree very quick.
Yeah.
That and we got really mad at the website at one point because they dropped the word limit on those. Character limit to a fifth of what it had been. And so we kind of left that place in disgruntlement. I believe they've upped it again to a half of what it used to be, but yeah.
Come on, we write regularly 15 to 20 pages per chapter, sometimes 28, you know.
Yeah.
You think we can make a compelling story with only 500 words per chapter?
I've seen the internet and no.
No.
Before we actually get into heavy stuff with past sins, I'm interested to know, do you guys prefer creating content or do you like looking at images, music? What do you do in the fandom besides just watching the show and past sims?
Well, I like writing's my primary distraction when I'm not working on school or job I have here. I am a college student that is working 2 jobs, even though one of them is well paying. It's just But
those loans are horrible. They need to go away.
Not going to comment on my financial situation in that regard, but
yeah.
But so. Producing content is really my favorite part, is just because, surprisingly, this show gave us gave a very rich soil for producing things. If the fandom has been any indication to that, stuff grows like weeds.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, apparently with the Columbus meetup, the very first time, they were showing it in a bubble tea cafe. And we thought that we were being horrible and loud and that nobody wanted to listen to us. But apparently they went back several months later and half of the people in the restaurant were bronies when they came back.
It's like, what are these guys talking about? It's an infection.
It's
literally an infection.
At least one of the waitresses at IHOP earlier definitely will be watching it.
The apocalypse that the Mayans spoke of is takeover by ponies. That shall be it.
I'm okay with that. Pony
I can live
apocalypse.
with it.
So, I guess we'll move right into the fic. My very first question is probably a bigger one. Why this story? What created Nyx?
This is a question I've answered before, but Nyx originally sprung out as much more of a plot device in another fiction I wrote, which was Creeping Darkness.
We'll edit that out. They don't ever have to know. They won't even know what this sentence is referring to.
But it's in that one I used Nyx as as kind of a representation of the last shred of good for Nightmare Moon. Now, I'll throw up a spoiler alert for this, but the basic storyline of Creeping Darkness was it was a crossover with the Xbox 360 game Alan Wake.
Okay.
And it's the primary antagonist from the Alan Wake game is this kind of omniscient place plus intelligence called the Dark Place. The names in that game are just oh so creative. But the interpretation I did for that story was that when Luna was purged of Nightmare Moon, all that was Nightmare Moon got thrown in there. And in the Dark Place, it was able to kind of recongeal together. Now, Alan Wake, the protagonist from the game, is at the end of the game sequence trapped in the Dark Place as well. And in that place, writers have power. It's like their words change reality. So the primary status quo changer for that is Nightmare Moon has tempted Alan Wake into writing her back into Equestria, or at least opening darkness up into Equestria. But as she does that, she has to give up some of herself to the darkness. So it's slowly taking her over as she's tricking Alan.
That's pretty fancy. It's
the way the darkness works in the Xbox 360 game is you have to give up something to get something. I laugh at it because
it's physics.
Well, actually, it was when I was first playing it, it was reminding me of Full Metal Alchemist.
Okay.
The law of equivalent exchange and that stuff.
Right, which is the same as matter can neither be created nor destroyed. It just gets turned into energy.
Yeah, exactly. And so
geeking out over here with my blue geek cup.
You have a blue cup? I have a blue cup right now.
I do, and my mug, which is sadly not full of caffeine, is Aperture Science.
Mine's just a plain blue cup, but it's full of milk. I like milk.
Milk is delicious.
But so at the end of that story, when Nightmare Moon's given up so much of herself to the darkness that she's basically just its new fancy new suit, there's a shred of her that it's like the shred, the good, the little spark of decency that Twilight fishes out of the very depths of the Dark Place. That was the original Nyx.
Okay.
And she lasted for half a chapter before she was merged back into Nightmare Moon. But after I finished that story and I was kind of pondering around for something else to write, I found that character was kind of nicked and bit in the back of my head. It's like, would not go away. And so that's where Pastins really started, was an idea of Creeping Darkness at the very end became somewhat of a redemption story for Nightmare Moon, beyond being hit by a rainbow and being turned back into Luna. I realize that is status quo for My Little Pony. Hit something with a rainbow, it goes away. But
goodbye, Q.
Exactly. But it turned into something of what would happen if it hadn't been just pure like jealousy, rage. It's like that was what defined Nightmare Moon when Luna was her. I hate when talking about two characters that are actually the same one. You never know what words to use. Yeah. But when Nightmare Moon / Luna was in that state, it was all hatred, it was all jealousy, it was just no real good emotions. So that's what defined Nightmare Moon. But if you were to take that character, which is arguably very different from Luna after she was hit by the rainbow, the elements of harmony, whatever you prefer to call that thing, it's like, if you were to take what Nightmare Moon was originally as a character, give her some good memories, And then it turned into the redemption story of give her a reason to not be bad, and then what happens when she is bad, kind of thing. I don't know. I'm rambling. I realize. I apologize.
Can I step in real quick?
Yes. I've done too much talking. Betty, you talk.
Okay. Originally, when Pinstripe was approaching the past tense story, he wanted Nyx to be kind of more or less like I don't want to say almost like a doppelganger or something kind of like that, and more like a catalyst to bring back Nightmare Moon. So basically, Nightmare Moon was kind of trapped in the shards, and Nyx was the result. And that would have made an interesting story, but I approached Pinstripe, and I said, hey, just a crazy thought, what if Nyx actually is Nightmare Moon, like the literal reincarnation? And at first Pinstripe was like, I don't know, let me think about it. I said, okay. And I decided to make a little debate doc in Google Doc, and I just basically listed the pros and cons of each approach, whether Nyx is just a catalyst to bring back Nightmare Moon, or whether she's actually is Nightmare Moon. And I listed the pros and cons of each side, and eventually, from there, we went on up the story we have now.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was one point where Batty Gloom really did weigh in well for the conversation. He earned his assistantship that day.
Which I'm very grateful.
Yeah, I wondered about that. I actually had sort of figured that would be a question more dominated by you in the first place, which is why the next question was, what's the editing process like?
For us in particular?
Yeah.
The process we're using currently, which is giving us the best results so far, is we found a lovely bit of software called Speakonia, or I think that's how you pronounce it. It's Speakoina, or something like that.
That works.
It's a software that it's basic Microsoft SAM voice production, but it has one really, really, really nifty little feature. It reads from the clipboard. So if you copy anything, it spits it out. So this really helps with the editing process because it's like one thing that you're always told when you're editing is it helps if you can read it to yourself.
Right.
Well, I don't like doing that, but I don't mind listening to it. That's why I listen to you and your readings. Is that by just letting the software speak to me and I can copy paste, edit, copy paste, hear it read to me again, it works really well. Batty was the first one to use it, and it was giving results, and now I'm trying to do it myself as well. So, and in the end, it's all about having more eyes on it, because I'm grammar blind sometimes, I swear, and Batty's better at catching things than I am, but at the same time, that's why we usually have it go through at least 3 to 5 other pre-readers just to try to nitpick all those little things. Because we absolutely hate it when we get a comment, it's great, there's a couple typos, but it's great, and then they don't tell us the typos.
And what they don't realize is we could have worked on maybe, if you took all the hours and worked on a story, we could have worked on a story about maybe, 40 hours straight, if you combine all the time. So after 40 hours of reading, writing, rereading, re-editing,
you don't see
and we
things
still
anymore.
make a mistake.
It's the same issue that you have, like, for example, in coding, and why there's a paradigm in the coding industry called pair programming that works so well is when you're staring at something and you can't figure out why it's not working, a fresh pair of eyes can come over, look over your shoulder, and they're missing that, and you go,
Hey, look at that semicolon that should be there.
Oh, no. I have a perfect example of this. There was a homework assignment I was doing where it was a rendering system for a Jello cube. Absolutely horrible, huge sets of data. I was having bugs, and I was sure as sugar that the bugs were coming from how I was processing the data. No, it was a off by 1 error. It was literally me having a plus 1 somewhere. I should have had no +1. I was so cheesed off.
I have similar stories back when I was coding. We remote in from the dorm rooms to the main server to work on our labs when I was back in college, and we managed to crash the link to the server a couple of times because of the way Java handles text.
Fun.
We didn't realize that in another iteration of the program, it appends to the end of the last text object used. It doesn't clear it. And we were supposed to be parsing entire novels into one text object.
Fun.
But
So you were parsing entire novels into a single library of a text object.
Yeah, because what the program was designed to do was predict the next word based on frequencies and the length of the key string. So if your key string is 10 words, you have a pretty good idea of where in the novel the next word comes from. But if you use a really low one, you get these weird sentences.
Interesting.
But anyways, that random coding bit aside.
Yeah, we went techie on everyone. And
we did.
Apologize.
Most of them have no idea.
I barely know what you're talking about. I don't code.
I haven't coded in a couple of years, but... So, back to ponies. Obviously, you guys are completely okay with OCs for the most part. What do you think it is about OCs that strikes people the wrong way? Because even for such a well-written story, you guys catch a lot of flack just because it's got an OC in it.
I think it's a matter of guilt by association. Like, before, ponies and all that, you had tons of fan fictions with OCs and stuff like that. And I'm sure it's very easy to look around, go to fanfiction.net or anywhere else with a huge collection. You're bound to find a few dozen, 100,000 stories with OCs in them. And the thing is that a lot of people I notice cannot tell the difference between an OC and a self-insert.
Yeah.
And you have to understand, all self-inserts are technically OCs, but not all OCs are self-inserts.
Absolutely.
That, and I gotta be honest, I don't like the term OC because that means original character, and to me, if it's original character, it would not be based on the universe. So, me being a little picky and snobbish, I prefer the term fan character.
That's fair, because the thing is, it's hard to create a rich world, especially a very detailed one, without creating non-canon characters. For example, even though all of the main 6 are in the Fallout series, they're not part of the story. It's just too big a world. But
yeah, and Cat's Fallout is a perfect example of how far someone can go with just having a bunch.
That was a sound.
That was my cat. Sorry about that.
Hello, kitty.
Okay, completely derailing my chain of thought there.
Something K-Cat Fallout.
You couldn't really have done that world that well without the original characters because it needed to be put further in the future, and minus Luna and Celestia, there's not a lot of characters that are going to survive that long.
Right. So, this is tacked on to the last question. A lot of writers have problems creating OCs that aren't Mary Sue's. What advice do you have for those fledgling writers? Either of you, both of you.
You want to start or should I start?
You can go ahead and start. I want to think about it for a moment.
Okay. My advice is think very carefully about what role you want your OC to be. But for example, I don't quite think Nyx is OC because she's more like a reincarnation of a previous established character. But right. The point is, even if you want to technically say she is an OC, but we knew what we want to accomplish with that. She was meant to be Nightmare Moon given a second chance, so we got that. Spell Nexus, I admit he's kind of more like a plot device or a villain. We're going to try to explore him in another side story, see his side, see how he felt the corruption later. But the point is, you have OC, you must know where you want to go with it. Here's another example, bit of a spoiler or a preview, you want to say. There's a crazy, insane fan theory that says Rainbow Dash is also for a finish. And what I'm doing is I'm writing a story that explores that crazy idea and make it plausible. Huh. So, in order to explain how she came about doing this really weird thing, my story is she had like a mentor of sorts, someone who taught her how to use cameras and kind of egged her on and that kind of stuff. So the point is, I use one OC exclusively. I mean, the rest of the characters are either just background characters from the show or just people in one chapter. But the point is, though, she has this role, and that's it. I know, I'm rambling. All I'm going to say is know what you want to come to OC and try to give them some realistic flaws, whether it be a bad temper or maybe a bad memory or a physical ailment, something like that. Try and make them like a real person.
The personal line I see is it's easier to write OCs that aren't the main characters. For example, in another one of my stories, that was Haunting Nightmare, yeah. And I'm bringing this up because Kat commented, I had an OC character in there for Third Eye, who is played as a side character and fulfilled a role much like, Batty was describing with the mayor character for Rainbow Dash's mentor.
Okay.
Mary Sue's tend to come up when you see a story that is focused on the OC as the main character. And that's part of the reason we get flat for past sins and all that stuff that's the first warning sign that a character may be an OC is the story is about them.
Right.
So it's once you make your character the main focus and it becomes their story, that's when you have to really tread carefully about how you do about things. Like certain pitfalls that I know are fairly familiar and are the ones that a lot of people will comment on is, are they liked by everyone? Is there anyone that kind of doesn't warm up to them initially? And these are the complaints I hear. I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself, but like everyone.
Okay, I'll jump in real quick.
Yeah, sorry, my brain's farting on.
That's okay.
Okay. Basically, pitfalls to avoid is your OC should not be liked instantly by everyone. Okay, it's
no
not
person
hard.
is liked by anyone right away.
Right. It's plausible that a group of people might like them eventually or warm up after time, but, keep in mind personalities, conflicts of interest, things like that. We see that all the time within the main six just in the show. Keep in mind the character should be too perfect, Everyone has their flaws and good points, So if they're smart, make them overly emotional, or if they're, hard worker, maybe, he's afraid of hurting other people's feelings, You gotta think about flaws and that kind of stuff. And I think Penstroke's right, there are exceptions. Volley Crusher is a good story where OCs are the main focus. But OCs do tend to work better either as a side character or even as just appearing in just part of the story. Like, again, that story I was working on, that OC, she's only there for the first fifth of the story. I'm not going to explain why she disappears, but she disappears and Dash again takes over as the main character of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, Dash is never not the main character, but yes, the character he's discussing disappears, and it's just that's one. It's a balancing act, and but at the same time, I think people are applying weird standards. Specifically because these are fan characters, because not to dig on on our source content at all, but Twilight was liked by everyone when she first came to town.
That's
really
true.
And so it's a strange set of standards, but
it facilitated the show.
At the end of the day, it's really have other people look at what you're doing, because if you're the only one looking at it, you may think it's fine, but they may notice that, this character's leaning a little bit too far this way or that way.
Very
I
true.
think one thing I also have to keep in mind, everyone has different standards. Penstroke and I, we try to give OCs a big break because we know some people just hate them on command, on sight, and that's just not really very fair. But the thing is, some people think, for example, power is a measure of Mary Sue's. And I'm thinking no, because if you go that route, then Superman is a Mary Sue, Batman is a Mary Sue, Goku's a Mary Sue, the Powerpuff Girls is a Mary Sue. So I don't think power is a good measure of Mary Sue-ness. I always think it's more about the interpersonal connections and that kind of stuff. But again, everyone has their own standards, so keep that in mind. If you have two people who hate your OC, even though you make them a good, dynamic character and all that good stuff, they're just hating for the sake of hating.
That, and on the comment of power, it's less about, I always feel it's less about the amount of power a character has, but how much they flaunt it. How much it becomes a key aspect of the story. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, just throughout that conversation, all I'm thinking of is, My Immortal over and over and over again. I don't know how familiar you are with that, but just listening to the comments.
I have not read it, but I listened to a dramatic reading of it.
The reason that I started my show was because my friends and I have gone through the entirety of it and recorded it. But that was long ago and probably will never make it online. But the very first thing I recorded is not on YouTube, it's on SoundCloud, and it's a live reaction to Cupcakes very similar to the style of My Immortal recordings, which is just awful. So, what was your guys' favorite part of writing the story?
I have no clue how to answer that. Because, Passings was originally written back last year in July, June, so that's a long way to think back on something like that.
It is.
Especially after I've still been staring at it for the past 9 months. But,
a verbal shudder there. Awesome.
No, it's just, because it became so popular, it's become kind of the thing we're trying to maintain as much as possible, just to thank people for making it as big as it got. That, and we do want to make good on our promise and provide a few side stories, and that's easiest done when it's actually up to date with everything. Make it accessible.
I'm sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, I was saying that we want to keep it as accessible as we can to new readers because like putting a season 1 tag on it will always confuses some people because they don't check the tags.
No one checks the tags. Only other writers check the tags.
I was just going to say, this might be too meta of an answer, but I think Past Sins is kind of special, only in the sense I consider it kind of almost like a community-written story in a sense. We had some critics who gave us some good critique, things to watch out for, flaws to correct, which we're trying to work on. It was a real learning experience, and basically a lot of people, not just Pinstripe and I, but a lot of editors, a lot of readers, a lot of critics, they may not realize it, but they kind of influence the story for the better. They help us with getting rid of Mary Sue-ness and Nix. They help us get rid of out-characterness in some characters. They help us watch out, and they taught us just a lot more about writing. We learned more about writing in Past Sins than Pinstripe and I have spent the 2 years on writing.com combined. So just a big thank you to everyone who wrote anything or said anything about the story. We have learned so much from them, and we really appreciate that.
Tempered by fire, to be sure.
As most of the good fics tend to be. So, I was hoping that maybe you could start going into not why the update, but what sort of things you are updating for Season 2.
Well, the main plan is to only modify key details so that we're fitting with canon. For most of these are just little nuances and changes in lines. For example, Diamond Tiara's father was named in show as Filthy Rich.
That's right.
And so, at the very least, we need to change Regal Cut's name to Filthy Rich, and we may adjust a few of his bits of dialogue, but thankfully the character is still stuck up and rich, for the most part. He's a little more down to earth than we portrayed Regal Cut, but at the same time, during the story, he's under the influence of certain things.
Exactly.
And so, his portrayal can remain for the most part unchanged. One of the two big issues we are going to have to look at just for like rewriting dialogue, purely, is the fact we now have a personality for Luna.
A bit more stuck up, a little more, shall we say, rigid than Celestia. And
we also have the one canon fact we got horribly wrong, along with so many other writers.
Rarity's parents.
Yes, Rarity's parents.
I remember us talking about that via comments 2-3 months ago.
Yeah. And so that only really requires a rewrite of, or at least an adjustment of 2 scenes. One where Rarity's talking with Twilight, the other at the very short one at the very tail end of the story. But, That, and I've been playing with the little idea that since some people really didn't like the random pair of background ponies we selected for Scootaloo's parents for chapter 13, I think.
I don't
14.
even remember that.
No, 15. Sorry, 15.
During the time when Nightmare Moon was holding court, two parents came in to ask to see if Scootaloo could come out. We had chosen them as Boxy Brown and Cloudsticker.
Right.
They didn't really go together, but that's one change I've been personally considering since now we have some proper parental fodder, is that I may look at changing that scene so it's Sweetie Belle and Rarity's parents coming to try to get Sweetie Belle out.
Oh, that's a good idea.
I like that. Especially because it's so hard in the head canon, at least mine, to think of Scootaloo having parents. I understand that she has to have parents to exist, but...
But you don't know who she lives with currently.
Sometimes I think she just lives at that clubhouse.
I think I've seen a sad little comic about that.
There are so many of them.
You can write a fanfic on that.
There are so many of them.
Oh, dang it, Boise, how do you pronounce your name? Now I'm going to have to write that.
Los de Sueños, I believe is how it's pronounced.
Boise.
There you go.
I can't pronounce the words for pronounce.
Los de Sueños.
You could just go, there's Silver Speech too, which is the Orson Welles character in an Equestrian Invasion. Should that ever actually get finished? One day I'll find a girl to voice Luna.
Okay.
But
so those are the really big ones. We're keeping a little hidden document somewhere that is basically all our ramblings about what could work, what needs to be tweaked, and thankfully we haven't been atom bombed by season 2 yet. That could still happen, especially with the Princess Cadence episode.
yeah,
Still worried. But at the same time, as long as we don't get the nuclear warhead dropped on top of us, then we should be able to change past sins so that it's season 2 compatible without changing anything radically. It's literally, I akin it to an artist adjusting a few lines in a painting or something. It's the overall shape, the picture itself, it's not going to change, but maybe the color's a little different here, and there's a line that swoops out a little bit more there.
right. I definitely know how that works.
Yeah, it's funny, but actually, just for, I guess, our own amusement, we kept track of things that were confirmed in season 2 that was in past sins. And to our surprise, a lot of things we wrote in past sins was kind of like a prediction of things that happened in season 2. You know, the ponies had concept of swords. What else? You know,
Zecora. The one I was really happy about was when we saw Zecora in the Nightmare Night episode.
Yes.
And it was proven that she makes a very good storyteller, and that she's willing to do that kind of thing. So that makes her role in chapter 5 really fit well.
I admit that I have spent so much time on past sins that there's a lot of times when I'll be watching the show and forget that that's not part of canon. Just because you got to realize the episodes that go up are roughly 45 minutes apiece, maybe up to an hour and a half, and they are about twice as long originally and take 3 to 4 times that length to actually edit them. So I'm spending like 10, 11 hours in a week.
It's infecting you, and I apologize for that.
That's fine. I will occasionally watch an episode and be like, "Where's Nix?"
Oh, real quick, one thing I was really happy about, when we only had season 1, a lot of people had this weird idea that Celestia never got angry, never got sad, never showed fear, ever, like she was just all-powerful. What I really liked was the first part of Elements of Return of Harmony, because there we saw something we never seen before. We saw Celestia vulnerable. We saw her worried. We saw her angry. We saw her fearful. And that was a greater range of emotions than what we saw in season 1. So it basically showed that Celestia isn't this perfect holy being. She's just like all the other ponies. She has these other emotions. It's just she doesn't have as much chance to show them because of her position. So that was really interesting.
agree completely with you on that. I loved that, and I'm glad that that happened. Although, I have no idea where they came from, because Ponyville was founded completely without them. I assume that they are some mystical beings of magical energy that became existing.
Are you talking, the Alicorns, or?
Yeah, because of Hearthwarming's Eve.
I always thought they were from outer space.
There you go. They are space ponies. Space! When I go to space.
That makes me think of a weird, like, Superman-themed comic.
Oh,
to that
God,
regard.
that's gonna lead to a terrible fanfic now.
But no, it was like, the comic was like, Celestia's being put in the little spaceship, and it's like, the Fostercorn and some other random character for the father figure were talking so happily about it and that stuff. But then Faust makes the point, where's our other daughter? What other daughter? And then
Luna!
Then there's Luna sitting in a little box in the
I
corner.
know that comic.
The cardboard box ends up getting just tied to Celestia's ship before it gets rocketed
that
off.
is hilarious. This discussion reminds me of a comic by Shikio1 who does all the as presented by ponies. And there was a second one for Dragon Ball Z where it was the Broly movie. And he was just screaming about how that was not an OC. And that's all I can think of.
I've seen that one.
That's the kind of fanfic it will spawn. Is someone thinking Broly out of... I'm not even going to finish that thought.
Still, I really wish we would see more of Luna than we saw the one episode. It's just like, it's like she gets her token appearance each season so far, and that's it. Poor Luna.
I love Luna. I would love to see more of her, especially after Friendship is Witchcraft.
She's okay.
That just makes me sad and want her to exist as a real character again, so that she's not that bad. But.
So what happens next?
I have only one last question written down, and that is, how did you find me, and what were your impressions when you did?
Oh, you mean your recordings?
Yes, because I admit that I shamelessly do not ask the authors. I would if I had more of a way, and I have, since I started, tried to do that. But there were many authors when at the very beginning where I was just like, I don't know how to talk to you.
That is not an excuse for me. I put my email address at the bottom of every chapter.
You do?
Yes.
Like I said.
And I'm going to do the same later.
Shamelessly just started doing it.
But, I was like, it was because I'd heard some people had done some, music for Past Sins. And so, like, there's someone doing a soundtrack right now. Oh my god, I don't know how, it's like when I found out you were going to do an entire reading. It's like, are you insane? But he's halfway, he's gotten 4 songs done, 0, 1, 2, and then 3-1, because he's splitting chapter 3 into 2 soundtrack bits.
That's impressive.
And it's just, so the way I tripped over you is I was going through YouTube, I typed Past Sins into YouTube or Google or something, and I saw this as like, live recordings, like, oh, hello. Hello, who's this and doing this? And I started listening, and thus you can thank the wonders of Google search.
Hooray. Oh my. Well, do you guys have any closing things that you would like to say to the audience on writing or Past Sins or random topics?
You got anything, Batty? Batty!
Yeah, I'm here. I'm trying to think.
You were stolen by the kitty.
Well, she does demand my attention a lot.
As does mine.
All I'm going to say is this. Never give up, and always listen to your critics.
But always know the difference between someone who's being a proper critic and someone who's being a troll. Because the trolls will never be happy. The critics can be satisfied.
Yes.
The trolls are happy when the trolls are making you unhappy. That is their goal.
Yes.
Well, with that, I suppose we shall bid the audience adieu. Thank you both so much for coming on the show. I hope to have this up in the next 2 weeks.
Glad to be here, boss. Glad to be here.
Glad to be here. It's a lot of fun. Sorry I got your name wrong.
That's fine. I don't expect anyone to get it right. Let alone, like, half the people that actually do.
Vos de sueños.
Sí. Alright. Well, I will hopefully talk to you guys again sometime soon. I look forward to continuing past sins, and have a wonderful day.
Thank
Yep,
you.
you too.
All right. Bye.
Goodbye.